Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, this is one of my favorite spaces because I get an opportunity to welcome our guests. And I know that they're coming and spending some really expensive stuff. The first is their time. It is one of the most precious commodity, 24 hours given to every single man, every being on this planet. How we honor her, how we respect, how we love her will tell me much about you. The other is the journey. The journey is a powerful force because it created the individual that is we're about to engage in this wonderful conversation. And we want to thank Miyoko for coming because we want to just express our gratitude for him coming and spending this expensive stuff with us here at Threads of Enlightenment. Thank you so much for coming to Threads.
Thank you for having me, Ken. And I'm excited to be here. Good to be with and visit with you guys today.
Excellent. As one of my favorite questions, and I mentioned to you before that I ask people is, how do you serve mankind? And there's a reason why I do that. Because I want the listeners to understand that this trip right here on the planet while we're here is not just about them. It's not just about the individual. There are two journeys that we are called to walk. The first one is the individual independent journey, and the ultimate prize is the interdependent journey. So how do you serve mankind?
I guess the best answer to that would actually be taking my life journey, my own experiences, and combine it with my own gifts and geniuses, my own genius to actually, make the world a better place. I feel like we all are possessed with God-given gifts and talents and abilities to not only better ourselves, but to definitely better those around us and to make the world a better place. Unfortunately, many of the times, a lot of us leave this earth without tapping into that genius or those abilities to greatly benefit ourselves and benefit the world. So I contribute to humanity by encouraging others to tap into the same things that I just mentioned, and me myself continuing to strive to become a better version of myself, because it's always bigger than us. It's not about us. It's living this life is about service. It's about serving. It's about using your abilities, your talents, your skills, to better yourself, your families, your situations, and to be a blessing to others. So I'm actually excited. I'm glad I can actually do that. I can wake up every day to do that. Thank God. And, teach others how to do the same, because if you read on me, which I'm sure you have, like I'm a very, very big proponent of shifting the narrative to preconceived notions about success and things that the box that people really try to put us in, and actually really discovering who you are, what's important to you, what your genius is, and how you can make an impact, not only on yourself, but on the world. So that's my contribution to humanity.
I love it, man. And I believe that is why we are here on this planet. I always tell people that there's two systems, if you will. There's the truth, and there's a system of truth, and then there's the system of fact. And we live in a world that is full of fact. The fact is you're this, you're that, or whatever. But the truth, when people say that you are dumb and whatever, and you will believe that as fact, but the truth is, you are more brilliant than you ever think that you are. But once you see the truth of you, all those facts will start disappearing. And the goal is, the journey is to learn to allow the truth to set you free. For the scripture says that the truth will set you free. So as you learn the truth about yourself, as you state, you're gonna change your life. You're gonna change your family. You're gonna change your community, and you're going to change the world. So we love that vision, because that is the vision for every man and every woman. One of the things that we do here, man, because as I said, I told you, I always tell people it's bigger than you and I. Once you get that, then you can be selfish in a sense, and you've said it. I worked in skilled nursing facility, and I saw with my own eyes men and women that had never tapped into who they were, because I had conversations with many of them. And that, to me, when I was in that space, I realized that there was a great injustice being done, that people need to wake up. And that's one of the reasons why threads of enlightenment was given birth. One of the spaces that we travel to, Miyoko, is that time machine I tell people in the memory, and we want to go back into time and revisit that space that we call the family. What was your family unit like when you were there growing up? Because I tell people when we come out, we're still, mom and dad are there as these two pinnacles of our life, but they're strangers. Our sisters and brothers and sisters are strangers as well. And we are in this unit that is called a family.
Right.
What was your family like?
Man, my family life was great growing up. I mean, my father passed about a year and a half ago on 9/11. God rest his soul. He was a pastor for, man, over 50 years. So had a great set of parents. My mother, thank God, she's still alive. They were married 51 years. So I grew up in an environment where we were taught to serve. We were taught the value of something greater than ourselves. So spirituality was always something that was the forefront of our existence. So we learned very, very early on that it's not about ourselves, that we need to live a certain standard of life, where we do good to others, not trying to project evil to others and things of that nature. We grew up in an environment where education and learning was important. But first and foremost, it's interesting because I think out of all my siblings, I was the person that was really fascinated with teaching and learning and experiencing things in life and sharing those experiences with other people. Even at a young age, I was very, very musically inclined. A lot of my people in my family are musicians or singers or songwriters, so that was just something that I was naturally gifted at. But serving just did something to me, like being able to learn something and I say, oh my goodness, I benefited in an awesome way. Let me go try to teach this to somebody else. I always had that particular type of nature. And, if my mother was here on this podcast, she'd probably tell you out of all the siblings, I was the most that was like my dad. Me and my dad were very, very close. That was literally, not only was he my pastor, he was actually one of my very, very best friends, counselor, so growing up in a situation like that, I was blessed to be able to have that role model, that father figure, and that mother that kind of balanced everything out. So it just made me well-rounded as a human being. But man, that desire to serve and that desire to help others was very strong. It kind of drove me, and it's also part of the reason that drove me into burnout and chronic people pleasing and all those interesting things in my journey that I got, I got into, that I got into. So my upbringing was very good. I can honestly say I was very blessed. Have some great set of siblings. Thank God they're all healthy, have a reasonable portion of health and strength. They're, successful in their different respective careers. But we had a good background, man. I mean, we learned how to make the fun out of situations and just different things. I tell you, one of the funny things growing up in my era, like we weren't allowed, when my parents left, we weren't allowed to leave the gate. We had to stay inside the yard. Man, if you were caught outside of that yard when my parents got home, it was trouble. So I grew up in the era where when the street lights came on, like if you were outside and that street light came on, you better be in the house within 5 to 10 minutes. They were strict, but also very balanced at the same time. So yeah, I'm very thankful based on my upbringing, because other people weren't as fortunate as I was. So yeah, I'm very thankful for my upbringing, and instill some very, very important values that I carry with me today. So there's no complaints there at all.
I think the strictness has a degree of some boundaries, and when we are young, of course, we look at it as restriction, but as we get older and we also bring a family in and whatever, and we recognize that it was done from a space of love, because that's what we're concerned about, the well-being of the individual. And so that's why we created these boundaries. But you know us, human beings, how we test it. I mean, we read about it in Genesis chapter 3 when God set up some boundaries and some people went right over. So we know how that goes. Yeah. Don't
I have a 4-year-old now, so the
yeah.
things that my parents were teaching me, years ago, I'm looking at my 4-year-old, and these kids are not the same. I mean,
Yeah.
she's 4 on 15,
Yeah.
so it's
They
yeah,
grow
I understand
fast.
why boundaries are set.
Yeah, it's just to protect us, and that's something a people pleasing person has to learn. And I love how you have talked about servanthood and some of the pitfalls, if you will, some of the parts of the journey that we as servants and trained to be servants find ourselves in situations that, boy, do we need the hand of God to rescue us out of it, because
Absolutely.
we have created some wondrous stuff, but the intention heading in wasn't that. But when we got there, as you said, what greeted us was something totally different. So here you are, a
Right.
perfect example. You grew up in a family that stresses servanthood, because I think it is one of the most, I believe it's why we are here. Because again, you
Mhm.
grew up, dad is a pastor, my dad is a pastor, I grew up in the church. And to me, one of the most powerful
Oh,
verses or stories that I ever read in my life was when Jesus Christ was washing his disciples' feet. And when he began to
mhm.
talk to them about servanthood and the cost and all that type stuff of what it takes to be a servant. And
Right.
because that is the job, because he says the one that serves the most, he is going to be the greatest among you. And so the world system has gotten it twisted around. And so I'm so honored to have you here. You are exposed to all of this powerful data, that information, that and spiritual awareness as you've gone, as you're moving, and you have that foundation, Miyoko, as you're looking into your high school and stuff like that, powerful Christian foundation. Now you're in a system, one of the other system that we visit, that has its own rules and regulation, its own programming. How did you
Mhm.
manage yourself within the educational system, being the first one that we really have the knowledge of, little middle school and all that stuff, we still not there, but high school is when we start getting some real good information. How did you function within that space with the foundation of your spiritual awareness and your knowledge of the Bible?
Man, high school was fun. It's interesting. It was fun to me. I was very popular in high school. I was one of those kids where uh, the football stars, I knew them. I could get along with them. If it was somebody that was considered nerd, or you want to use that word, or very intelligent, or on the chess club or something like that, I got along with them. So I was the type. I just love people. I just
Yeah.
love connecting and learning things about different people. So that was one of the reasons why I was popular in high school, and of course my musical ability, singing and playing and all that other stuff, because I was on the choir and all those different things. But I was popular in high school because I learned, and this was just a God-given gift. I learned at a very young age how to connect with people.
Mm.
I learned from a very early age, and I always loved being around people older than me because I love stories and I
Yeah.
love experiences and love learning. I've always been like that. My father, one of the things my dad said, he said, I don't care who it is, how bad they may look to society, you can always learn something from somebody. And that always
Yes.
stuck with me. So I was able to connect very, very well with all different types of people. So I was very popular in high school. So I didn't have to conform with what society was saying I had to do in high school. And I'm very transparent. So, in high school, they're talking about sex education, and they're talking, peer pressure and all these different things, and you don't have to have sex and all that. For me, that was never a pressure. I was just myself.
Yeah.
I connected with everybody. So, in high school, I was, it was kind of this funny thing because I was a virgin. I was a virgin in high school,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So, and everybody, for some reason, everybody knew this. So it was kind of like,
Yeah.
you know, my friends in high school, some of the football players, they obviously weren't. And they're like, oh, here comes Miyoko, the virgin, you know. But it was like this funny thing. Hey,
Yeah.
it's interesting. And I have to say this because some people watching this will have children that are in high school and things like that. For me, that title for me was a badge of honor.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it basically told me that I respected myself, and that was something that obviously I wasn't willing to let go of because it was important to me. That was something sacred. And you very often, you don't really hear men kind of talk about that particular thing, but in my
Yeah.
high school years, all throughout high school, I graduated high school a virgin, you know. And I'm
Yeah.
saying that because you asked about particular standards and spiritual standards and things of that nature. So that wasn't a focus for me at high school. I'm not going to say I didn't like, I wasn't interested in girls, you know.
Yeah.
um I had relationships in high school, but that just wasn't a particular aspect of it. So I say that to say, very, very early on, I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to connect with people. I loved learning. I loved educating. I loved teaching, you know. And you would see your father preach, you know, Sundays and throughout the week. And it was like this, you didn't understand the significance of it then, but it's just like, wow, this is really cool. You know, he's
Yeah.
educating people. And my father had a, you know, he had a very, very high position at UPS at the time. So he has a job, and then he's teaching people, and he's educating people on the job, and then in the pulpit. So I thought that was
Yeah.
pretty cool. You know, so when I went to school, it was just like, man, really, all you really have to do is be yourself. You know,
Yeah.
be yourself, connect with people. And I just love that aspect of life. So high school was fun for me. You know,
Yeah.
had a lot of friends in high school. I can honestly say, I mean, I had people that obviously they didn't like me in high school, but it's some of that, you know how kids are. We're young, you know,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
immature. Some of it's because somebody
Yeah.
may like you and they like this person, things like that. So, but I had very, very good experiences in high school. And because of the values that I was taught, to kind of get to the point, it translated into high school. So things like trying to fit in, you know, trying to do things based on peer pressure, I never really
Yeah.
had that because I was comfortable being myself, and people accepted that. You know, that wasn't an
Yeah.
issue. It wasn't until I started getting on later in life to where I
Yeah.
lost sight of
Yeah. Yeah. I used to tell my sons something similar about your dad, about people and connecting to people and to respect people, regardless of what you think they do. Because I would put it in this fashion. I said, look, even the homeless person may hold the key to the rest of your life, and you
that. Right.
would miss it if you disrespected that homeless person and judge them because of how they look or whatever the presentation of it. But I tell them, everyone, you must honor everyone because of that. You don't know a conversation they may say to you, and you may be going through something in your life, and that conversation had housed the information necessary to propel you on your life. And so I always tell them, respect everyone because you never know who has the answer for you with your situation. So it's similar principle that your dad had instilled in you as well, because it is a powerful principle to walk with through your life. Here you are, as you said, you got a little distracted because you're heading towards college, and of course, it's a little distracting over there. Um, and so here you are, instilled in you about this teaching and this servant piece, and you're now looking to college. What was that conversation? Because I know Dad, he's sitting there and he's going to be a rock where you can tap into for some data. And you're looking now, you are impressed with Dad as a teacher at work and on the pulpit. Which direction did you pick, Miyoko, and why did you pick that direction, that school, as far as your study and stuff like that? Why did you pick it?
So school is very interesting. So I went to community college for a little bit for computer graphics because I can draw very well.
Yeah.
Absolutely hated it. Absolutely hated it. So my school journey is a little interesting because what happened is I knew at the very early age, I'm like, I want to help people. I want to dress up. I want my own business. This was me at 19 years old.
Yeah.
If it wasn't that, I was going to pursue some type of music career. So I remember, I remember telling my parents, like, I really don't want to go this route, the whole route. And of course, they were not happy.
Mhm.
They were not happy at all. And I remember looking at a job in the newspaper, and I was like, I want to dress up. I want to help people. I want to make a lot of money. I want to be able to support myself, that kind of thing. And I looked in the newspaper and it said, make a lot of money, dress up, help people. I'm like, oh, there's my dream job. So that was my introduction into the financial services industry. So I became an
Yeah.
insurance agent, sold health insurance, life insurance, annuities, things like that. I still hold licenses for that. And
Yeah.
the funny thing is, I would go into the homes of my clients. I would, sell them the insurance. I would leave. Then all of a sudden, I'd be back like twice a month. So, my manager is just like, why is this guy, like, what is he doing? Why do they love this man so much? And
Yeah.
what would happen is when I actually would go back, they're fixing dinner. We're sitting down, we're talking about life, I'm learning. And it's just like, they're like, Miyoko, you've been at this person's house 3 or 4 times. You made some good money for the company or whatever, but you're there a little too often. You need to be on to the next house. And they're like,
Yeah.
why do these people like can't leave you alone? I'm just like, I don't know, maybe they just like conversation.
Yeah.
And it naturally, I tell people I didn't choose coaching. Coaching chose me.
Yeah.
Naturally, we're just talking about different things and sharing life experiences, tips, and things like that. So they just enjoyed my company and a lot. And it's the blessing was at the time I was dealing with a lot of people who were 50 and older.
Yeah.
So here you have, I'm 21 years old. I'm talking to people 55, 60, 70, 75, sometimes 80, and they're giving me all these different stories and these life lessons. So
Yeah.
I'm gaining all this knowledge. Now that I look back, I'm gaining all this knowledge from all these different people. And I just absolutely loved it, and started to apply it to my own life. So to make a long story short, I stopped the insurance industry for a little bit. Um, got a regular job. Absolutely hated it. I didn't I didn't hate that I had to get up every morning. It was
Yeah.
one, it was a lot less money. Two,
Yeah.
it was something that I really didn't want to do. And three, I only did it to satisfy, my parents at the time,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
other people said I should be doing, right? So here I am sitting on, in this job, just thinking like, what in the world am I doing? So I'm just miserable, absolutely miserable. And I'm gaining a lot of weight. I'm just not happy. I'm not my usual self. And I remember one day looking in the mirror, bursting into tears. And I'm like, who are you? What are you doing? And this you're
Yeah.
talking about 6, 7 years later. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing with yourself? And I said, listen, you got to make one or two choices. You have to stop living your life trying to please everybody else, whether it's mom, whether it's dad, whether it's whoever. Um, or you can stay that way. Your health continue to get worse. You continue your mental health. I mean, you're just in a bad space now, right? You're not even who
Yeah.
you used to be. Or you can make one of the most important but scary decisions you ever made, and that is to go against everybody, including your parents,
Yeah.
respectfully. And I remember my
How
dad.
old were you? Sorry to interrupt, Miyoko. How old were you when you made that decision?
I think I want to say I was probably 20, maybe 23 or 24 at the time.
Wow.
Yeah, maybe 23 or 24 at the time. And I remember coming home and telling my dad, I was like, Dad, this is not what I want to do. I'm not happy. This is not one of those things like I'm not the person that's going to try to jump from one job to the next or anything like that. I really know what it is that I want to do. And I remember praying about it because my dad, I knew he was going to be livid, and he was
Yeah.
just like, he wanted to yell at the time, but he
Hmm.
said, you know what? He said, I'm just going to pray for you. And I said, okay, and then I told my mom, and she was just like, all right, I'm just going to pray for you. So what happened is, the next couple of years were rocking, and my dad is just, because dad's old school. My dad was from the old school.
Yeah. Yeah.
Entrepreneurship wasn't really a thing. It's this
Hmm.
attractive thing now. Small business, it wasn't a thing. It's a thing now. So, my
Yeah.
dad's just like, oh, you're never gonna make any money in sales. You're not. I'm trying to look out for you. Those types of things. So,
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
of love, he was saying these particular things now. So, what would happen is I started pursuing the coaching, getting certifications and things like that. And I remember one time I did my first podcast, right? So I'm on a podcast
Yeah.
and things like that. So my dad, he's kind of hearing what's going on. And then I get featured in a publication. And so I show
Yeah.
my dad. It was one of my first publications. I think it was in Women's Health and Fitness.
Yeah.
I'll never forget it. They were talking about mental health and how it's in alignment with fitness. So I was a personal development coach at that time. So
Hmm.
I contributed some thoughts, and the editor, they loved it. So they put me in Women's Health and Fitness. So I was absolutely like, wow, man, Women's Health and Fitness magazine, right? So I show my dad, and like he sees my name in Women's Health and Fitness magazine, and he's just like, man, that's my son. Like, wait a second. Like I know a Women's Health and Fitness magazine. It's a very popular magazine. I don't read it, but I know what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's just like, wow, okay. And so then I got featured in another publication for something. And then he's just like, wait a second. So now he stops going from being quiet, to how's the business going?
Yeah.
You know, I tell people who don't have the support in the very beginning,
Yeah.
your vision is your vision. It wasn't given to anybody else. As you
Yeah.
continue to work it and as you continue to grow, those people that really love and support you, they'll actually rally around you. But it's your
Hmm.
responsibility to make that vision manifested. And I think we
Yeah.
get really hung up on that fact. And, later on in life, I did it again. I was gaining momentum in my profession and wanted to seek validation or approval from someone else. That's chronic people pleasers, thing going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. That's it.
And
That's the
what that
cycle.
does is it keeps you from your purpose. It keeps you from
Yes.
really tapping into the next level of yourself.
Hmm.
So, and what it looks like to the people is just like, oh man, they are stuck in this rut again, not realizing the potential is there, the level, that the vision is there, but this person is caught up in a cycle of people pleasing and seeking
Yeah.
validation from everyone else except within themselves. And this is a cycle that is so often overlooked. This is the reason why, people are in amazing careers and we may see them in the limelight, and all of a sudden they're just, to us, all of a sudden they're dissatisfied with their career, dissatisfied with their life. What it is they've lived their life trying to please external things and things outside of themselves. I'm not talking about from a purposeful atmosphere, like, you know, doing something greater than
Yeah.
yourself. No, I'm talking about just trying to please external
Yeah.
sources, like parents, like spouses, like
Hmm.
friends,
Yeah.
corporations, media.
Yeah.
They become, their self-worth or their self-esteem is determined by what all those things think of them, how they're
Yeah.
perceived in those particular areas. And I fell into that. That desire to serve that I had, I did not balance that in a healthy way.
Yeah.
So now you're trying to serve everything, everyone, media, business. You're involved in the hustle culture now. You're doing all these
Hmm.
things, and it's like, man, I don't even know who I am anymore. And that's why I say, when you were talking about high school, I said along the way, I actually lost sight of that.
Yeah.
Because me in high school then is who I am now, but even beyond
Yeah.
that, but further than that. I was 100% authentically me in high school.
Yeah.
Then I allowed society, the world, and particular things to begin to shape a mindset that took me away from that. So I tell a lot
Hmm.
of people, one of the reasons that makes a person great in what they do and gives them so much impact in society is when they're 100% comfortable with who they are. They know who they are, they know what's important to them, and they know exactly what they need to do every single day to align that with their reality. When we lose sight of that, that's when we really get in trouble.
Yeah. I was, the reason why I had asked you that question, Miyoko, was how old were you? I was like 37, somewhere around there. Four
Mm-hmm.
kids, five kids. I have my five boys at the time. And that's when I stopped living for pleasing mom and dad. I was, I had a big family, had my family, and I was still living. I was out from under my parents, had my own
Mm-hmm.
family, and I was still living my life to please my mom and dad. And
Wow.
I remember when I made that transition, and I tell people that Ken Primus, the individual, was born when he was 37 years old. Before
Mm-hmm.
that, I was living to please my parents. I mean, every decision that I made had, to a degree, when I look back at it, had this stamp of approval from them
Right.
trying to get it, that stamp of approval.
Mm-hmm.
And once you are aware of that, and Miyoko talked about it, it takes a long time. Progress, it takes a long time because we tend to, um, uh, the habits that we form as people pleasers, it takes us a long time to become aware of it because it's such a part of your personality. It's just everything
Right.
that you think and do. You're not even ever aware of it until, like, sometimes
Right.
when your world comes crumbling down to the point where you can't see sideways. That's when you now begin um, to be able to start a journey back as to, wait a minute, how did I get here? You see, and you start getting glimpse of things. Again, everything is just a little glimpse. And then as you continue to move forward, the picture becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you'll be able to put that puzzle together, go, wow, okay. But you will come to a place where you're going to crash and burn. I mean, we call it burnout in circles and so forth. And you become wasted because you haven't focused on you. You've pleased everyone
Right.
else and not understanding that the principle is
Right.
to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy mind and thy strength, and to love your neighbor as you love yourself. You have to have this relationship with God, or with love, to understand, because you got to learn the reason why you're burning out and all that stuff, because you really don't love yourself. You don't know anything
I
about it.
agree.
And as you learn to love yourself, you then start learning how to instill boundaries. And the boundaries are there to protect
Right.
you. Jesus did the same thing with his disciples. He instilled boundaries. He was hanging out with tons of people, and then he would just remove himself from them. And he had boundaries. He went and meditated in prayer. And when he came out of that, was when he saw most of the most powerful miracles. He walked on water after he came out of there. He did heal sick. He did, I mean, right after he came out of that setting of boundaries to go and do his meditation and his prayer and connect to himself and to his God and to God, his Father. That's where the power is, guys. And you'll hear it from Miyoko's story, because that's where the power is. You got to go back in. I call it the place of solitude, and recognize that that place is a place of power. So talk to us. Here you are. You're trying to please everybody. I mean, you're famous, according to Dad. How's the business? You know, he knows the mags, he knows all the other things, and you're getting the
Right.
accolades from, hey man, good, good thing, and then you're pushing the hustle hustle is there, you know, you got to do the hustle. And before you know it, you look at yourself and you're under. When you were under, man, as they say, when I interviewed someone and she said she was so far under the rock, she was under the ground that was under the rock. So when you found yourself under, where were you and what was it that caused you to be there? And you labeled it burnout.
I think, well, first and foremost, I think people have the wrong definition of burnout. If you look at the
Yeah.
World Health Organization, I think they call burnout an occupational phenomenon. And that, to me, entirely incorrect. Now, I'm not saying you can't get burnt out in a degree.
It's the lifestyle, Miko. It's the lifestyle.
Right. So by the time it gets to work, it's already at a state. And this is what people don't understand. So I break it down into 4 areas. And the first area is internal. It's, what is your relationship with yourself? What is your belief system? What are your values? What are your principles? If those are not aligned, you're going to have a problem. And that's where burnout starts.
That's where it
burnout
starts.
Is internal. People are looking at it as external. Burnout is internal. So it's the internal system. So you got to check that first. The second thing is your affectional relationships. What is your relationship like with your spouse, your loved ones, your children, your friends? That dynamic, that personal dynamic. The third one we kind of talked about, spiritual. You got to have that particular relationship. You have to. And then lastly, it's occupational. The problem is we go straight to occupational and we skip all these other things. So then we wonder why Bill committed suicide. We wonder why these particular people in these industries, they're so burnt out. They're on stage all the time. And now they've checked into a mental health facility. That is not because they have been spending too much time exerting themselves on stage. There are some other underlying things going on that are not being addressed. Primarily the first 3. The internal, the spiritual, and the affectional. Those areas are really not focused on when it comes to burnout. The first thing is, well, how many hours are you working at the job? What's your relationship like with your boss? Well, then explain to me why somebody can get their dream job and then 2 years later absolutely hate it. No energy, no drive, no will to do it anymore. I can guarantee you, if you were to sit down with that person, there's a lot of other things going on in those 3 areas that they're not telling anyone else.
Miyoko, how did you begin to recognizing that information? And I'm sure you had time to learn about it, but once you recognized it, how did you address each of those areas to begin to move yourself from one space to the place to where you are today? How did you address each and every one of those for you, so that you can make it out? Because basically you're in this particular space now, you are your first client, if you will. So how did your first client get out from where he was with those 4 principles that you had, just talked about?
First thing is asking the first question, who am I? I'll ask anybody, after the lights are off, after the job is done, I don't care if you're the biggest recording artist in the world to just an average employee. After all is said and done, after you're away from your family, after you've tucked the kids in, after everything is silent, when you lay down in the bed, who is that person you lay down with? And I'm not talking about the person next to you. I'm talking about you. Who is that person you're laying down with? Or if you don't want to do it that way, go to the mirror after everything is silent. Who are you looking at? Who are you looking at then? And to be honest, when we do that, most people don't like the person we see. Because that person we see is not who we truly are. So you got to start from there. So I'm like, who am I? Who did I used to be? Who am I? And when you start asking yourself that, you'll see everything, your actions, your behaviors are not in alignment with who you really are. So then it's just like, man, I got to change that. So what am I truly passionate about? What is important to me? Like what is what really drives me, what makes me me, and what makes me want to get up every day and say, this is what I want to do with my life, my profession, all these different things, right? So you ask yourself all these questions. Then the next thing is, all right, so what do I need to do every single day to accomplish these things and to stay in alignment with who I truly am? And you said something that I teach very often now, and reinforce myself: boundaries. Everything needs boundaries. And people look at boundaries as this evil thing. Boundaries are not for that other person. Boundaries are for you.
Yep.
Boundaries are for you to safeguard your principles, your values, your beliefs, the things that are important to you. I used to think boundaries were bad. I used to feel bad saying no to people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and every time we're supposed to serve, right?
Yep.
Every time somebody would ask me to do something, I would be, I'd be afraid to say no. Or my personal life, it affected my personal relationships as well. You know, it broke down areas of communication in some ways because I was under the impression that saying no was a bad thing. No, I don't want to do this. No, your behavior is unacceptable. No, you shouldn't communicate with me like this.
Yeah.
You know, no, I'm not. This is my boundary. This is not something that I'm going to accept. All those things were controversial or led to me saying no. So, because my perception of no was different, particular things I avoided. And that did not go well at all. Because as human beings, as we have values and principles and beliefs, boundaries are necessary to be set and forth. You know, boundaries will determine how you're treated, um, to how prevalent an impact you make in society, you know, to how healthy you are, mind, body, soul, and spirit. All those things revolve around the boundaries that you set for yourself, not for other people. Remember, I'm not saying, because boundaries are taught, oh, you got to set boundaries against people. No,
Yeah.
set boundaries for yourself.
Yep.
You know, and boundaries is such a negative word, right? People use it in such a negative connotation. So if you don't want to say boundaries, you can say principles.
Yeah.
Set these specific principles for yourself and then stick to those principles. And you're going to have time when those principles are challenged. This is life. They're going to be challenged. They may be challenged every single day, but it's your job. It's your responsibility to stay as in line with the most authentic version of yourself as much as possible. So those are the things that I did. And you'll find once you do that stuff, the business starts to become fun again. You start to make more money in your business. You start to it's different because now you're tapping into parts of yourself you haven't tapped into in years.
Mm-hmm.
I ask a question to a lot of my clients. And the question is, you know, when they come to me overwhelmed, burnt out stuff, I'll say, when's the last time, like, what do you want? And they'll tell me, I'll say, Miyoko, you know what? I don't even know.
Yeah.
These are very externally successful people in the public eye. I have no idea what I want because nobody's asked me that in a long time. And you know what? I haven't even asked myself that in a long time.
Yeah.
And that right there, that is very sad.
Yeah.
But this is the majority of society, especially in Western culture. Especially Western culture.
Yeah. People in the Western culture, they don't want to face themselves, man, and ask those questions. And because when you face yourself, you can't lie. Yeah,
Right.
because you're staring right at yourself.
Some people just don't know how to face themselves. They don't even know what that is. They're so busy living according to somebody else's version of success or what they're supposed to be in the light of somebody else. They don't even know what facing themselves is because they don't even know who they are at the end of the day. You know, and that's the thing. We have so many distractions now in the world.
Yes.
Everything to keep us from who we truly authentically are and are meant to be. And it's everything to what's projected for us to be.
Yeah.
And we're all unique. We're all different.
Yeah. I, I try to encourage people to fast. Um, and I always tell them fasting, they look at it wrong. I say fasting from TV, fasting from your
Mhm.
phone, fasting from this and that. And I'd give them certain examples. And
Mhm.
I would tell them, as far as your electronics, put it away for 15 minutes. Take that
Mhm.
15 minutes and just talk to yourself. Ask yourself
Right.
questions. How's your day? What are you planning on doing? And don't listen to the bing, the bing, the bing, the bing. Let it go. And give
Right.
that 15 minutes. And then I said, when you do that, you will see that tomorrow you want 20 minutes instead of 15 minutes. You start coming to a place where you desire more so that you can begin to answer those deep questions that you ask yourself. And I had interviewed this woman, um, Miyoko, and she said something that um, I've never thought about it. I've said it, and we talk about it just now about the self. And she said when she was going through her dark times, and she
Mhm.
said she asked herself this question: "Who are you?" And she had children. She was a mother with children and so forth. She said, "Who are you without your children? Who are you without your husband?
Right.
Who are you without your mother?
Mhm.
Who are you without your father?
Right.
Who are you without your friends? Who are you without your job? Who are you without the dog and the cat?" And stripping away all of the others. And she said,
Mhm.
she sat and say, "Who are you?" And that was when she began her journey. And every one of us that desire the change have to come there. And when we get
Right.
there, it is when it begins. And I always tell people, that space, the purpose of your gift is that once you begin to, your gift will eventually begin to use you. It has to be expressed, it
Mhm.
has
It'll
to
make more
come
sense.
out, and
Right.
it has to, and it will use you to come out. Um, but you have to give it the opportunity, and that is the journey that you goes to. So here you are, you went through all of these, you begin to ask the questions, Miyoko, and you are making the changes. When you came out,
Mhm.
if you will, and we're always moving forward. None of us has ever arrived because, the Bible says, add to your faith virtue, and a whole bunch of stuff you got to add to it. And that is, to me, I tell people, personal development is sitting right in the Bible. You
Mhm.
just got to look at it. This is deals with attitude, behavior, and all kinds of stuff. And it ends up with love.
Absolutely.
You got to love your
Yes.
brotherly. You got to love yourself. It's all in there. And you just have to understand that um, it's every man and every woman is
We
called
we
to
just
the
we just
journey.
we just stole from
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I tell them, a lot of Christians are lazy. They don't want to do the work that takes to do that. So here you are, and as you begin to be pulled, because I know even after you start learning those things that you needed to learn, there is a space that we visit that we know that we're called to. There's a deepness of this call, and there's an uncertainty that we feel at that moment and trying to navigate it. But that's where our assignment is. When you got there,
Mhm.
what was it, and when you began to realize more of the deepness of your conversation and your assignment, when you got there, Miyoko, how was it, and how long did it take you to begin to surrender? Because we have to surrender to get into that place to become a servant.
You know, I think for me, it didn't take me long because I was already coaching. I already had the
Yeah.
mindset to, I've had this experiences. How do I learn from it? How do I teach somebody else? So I think it's when, my personal relationship, was really, really bad. My father got sick, he had passed away. And I think that was pretty much the icing on the cake for me,
Hmm.
to really, really kind of look at this burnout thing and realize that COVID happened, the mental health crisis came, and it just blew through the roof. We lost a lot of people during COVID, and
Yeah.
the mental health community, they were bombarded.
Yep.
People had to stay in their homes, all these types of things. And I think through all that whole ordeal, how that mentally affected me, and mentally affected my family, my father passing, all those things combined. It's just like it made me realize that if you're not spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and physically aligned with yourself, then you're really going to have a problem. I don't
Yeah.
care how much church you go to. I don't care how many services you don't miss. I don't care how much yoga you participate in. If you
Yep.
are not completely aligned in those areas, you're going to have a problem. There's going to be a breakdown somewhere. And like you said, this is an ongoing thing. It's an everyday thing. So what I set out to do is I said, man, you know what? People have this burnout thing so incorrect. And me personally experiencing this for myself, I feel like it's part of my mission, part of my purpose to bring people back to who they truly are, tap into what they're truly gifted at and
Hmm.
what's really important to them, and then really start to base life around that and the principles we talked about earlier, the spiritual, the
Yeah.
affectional, internal. Focus more on that, because high income skills for a job, you can always develop that stuff. But the reality of the matter is, it's the you that you're not focusing on that's going to enhance everything else. It's going to enhance your relationships. It's going to enhance your work performance. It's going to enhance your overall stress level, your health. It's going to enhance all that stuff. So this is something that I'm very, very passionate about, and I live every single day.
Yeah.
When I talk about my dad, there's a piece of me that is no longer there. So
Yeah.
you have to recalibrate yourself to live without that piece functioning in the way that it used to be.
Yep.
Because in spirit, my dad is definitely still here.
Yeah.
Part of his legacy is carried on through me to his children, but I can't be like, hey, pops, what's up? I got this issue going on,
Yep.
where I'm going through so much now. Now it's just, personally, it's just me and God now. So,
Yep.
and I have people, I'm saying I have people to talk to, but I don't have a natural father at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have to adjust to that. So my question, Ken, is how many other people lost people? How
Yep.
many other people right now are completely unsatisfied with their life because they're waking up every day playing a role? It's like
Yeah.
they're an actor, an actress in a horrible movie that they don't want to be in. So I feel like it's part of my mission to really bring the eternal, the spiritual and the internal dynamic back, the family dynamic back to being a priority. And then the workplace stuff, that'll take care of itself to a degree. But we're not addressing these things in burnout. I struggle with burnout for a long time because of my chronic people pleaser. People need to hear that message. People don't
Yeah.
even know that their chronic people pleasing is causing burnout. But they're the ones that
Yeah.
are home frustrated. They're the ones crying. They're the ones upset. Nobody understands me. Everybody is pulling from me, and I can't ever do anything for myself. And I'm just losing myself. I get this all the time. And then it's just like, well, are you telling them no? Do you have boundaries? No. I just say
Yeah.
yes all the time. I expect them not to ask me, so I don't have to say yes. Boundaries and principles, you have to respect them first for anybody else to
Yeah.
respect.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I feel like if I can affect a couple thousand people's lives in this particular degree, then that's great. But I think, the cookie cutter version of boundaries and self-care, and it's more than getting your nails done and going to the spa and yoga. It's way more than this stuff. We got to get
Yeah.
away from scratching just the surface and really go underneath the glacier and see everything else that's underneath there, because that's what's spilling out into the external world. So I feel like it's part of my mission, and it holds me accountable to practice the same things myself. So as I teach others, I'm accountable myself. And that's the beautiful thing about it.
That is awesome, man. I'm going to pretty much leave it there. There's nothing else to say at all in there. And guys, everyone that is listening to our conversation, we're going to provide everything, all the links for you to get to him. Author, everything that he does, whatever he does, I suggest you guys get into his space, because his insight knowledge will help you to see some things about you. And once you're able to see them, then you're able to move through it. If you're not aware of it, you will never come out. And so, but once you are aware of it, then you know that, and you have a guy that is able to walk you through, because he's been it, he's experienced it for many years, as he stated. So we're going to provide everything for you guys to get access to Miyoko. And get in, again, as I said, some of those things that you guys, once you get in there and you know friends and families that are going through, get it to their hands and get it to make sure they connect with Miyoko, so he can assist them through and walk them out of that situation. Because I had to go through, here's someone that laid it out. I had him lay it out for you guys, so you could see, understand the process, but you have the individual who has put those processes in place, and he will be able to guide you out. Miyoko, thank you so much, man, for coming to Threads of Enlightenment and sharing your precious commodities with us, which is your time and your journey.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure. Lastly, I want to say I do have a quiz. It's called Are You a People Pleaser? It's 5 questions. Because not only did I know that I was a people pleaser at the time, there's different types of people pleasers. That's a whole nother discussion. But it's a quiz. It'll tell you exactly what type of people pleaser you are, give you some tidbits, some tips, and all that stuff. It's a fun quiz, but it's very, very enlightening. I encourage you guys, you ladies and gentlemen, to actually take it. If I can, I would definitely like to post some type of link to that, once you actually post this episode. But that's all.
Definitely, we'll put it together, because it's necessary for their freedom. And that's what we are here all about, is for you to obtain your freedom. And again, man, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks so much, Ken. Thank you for having me. Everyone have an amazing day.
Thanks.